Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. My name is Jane Atkinson. I'm the author of The Wealthy Speaker 2.0, The Epic Keynote, and hot off the press, The Wealthy Speaker Daily Success Planner and Journal. Are you using your journal every day, wealthy speakers? I cannot think of a better way to start the new year and to start building momentum. It's my favorite part of the day. And as you'll read in some of the blog posts, sometimes we have to roll it back and start the day over because we forgot that part. I want to give a shout out to Gene Hammett. Gene is such a great guy, but he's a great client, and I really appreciated your kind words and your kind comments about the podcast, and thank you for being a loyal listener, Gene. We really appreciate that over here. So, the question of the day today is, how do we write a bio that makes our clients want to pick up that phone or email us and ask us about, whether or not the date is free, or ask us about whether or not we might be a fit for their conference. That is our goal. So today's podcast topic is writing that killer bio. And our special guest came to me actually through the almighty use of video, which is ironic because we're talking about something that's writing related. Caroline Mays, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today.
Hi, Jane. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, you did a super cool video that we are going to put in the show notes to show everybody, because this is what lured me to say, oh, there's somebody who's really cool. Let me find out about that. Tell us the story about how this video, which I think has probably taken over your life, took place.
Yeah. Well, it's I'm going to try and tell this story succinctly, but long story short, my cousin is the director and the owner of a video company called Shine Creative in Baltimore. And he and I, we don't see each other very often. And he happened to be in California. I moved a small mountain in my schedule to make it out to the coast to see him and his wife. And we were having this, the what you've been up to lately conversation. And he got to messing around on my website, and he was like, oh my God, these bios, he was reading my samples and reading my bio. And he said, these things read like manifestos. Let's make a video out of your bio. And I said, okay. And so we shot it the next day before we all left town, and then kind of the rest is history. But what's interesting is that he has shot so many of these, what he calls talking head series. We've all seen them. It's like you see an artist talking about their work, or a business person talking about their work, kind of sitting in a chair, documentary style, and then you'll see them in their studio or whatever. And he's done thousands of them. And he was talking about, he's bored with them. We've seen them, we've all seen them, and just, it's shot like it's supposed to be authentic, but it never really is,
There sometimes feels like there's a piece missing.
Right. And he wrote a blog post about it actually for his business. And he was saying it's like you have all these moving parts and you're trying to piece the story together in the editing room. And, he said, well, this is so different when you actually provide the script, and then the video kind of follows the writing. Wow. And so anyway, it's given him this new way into, interviewing or talking about an artist's work or a business person's work.
What's that style called?
The one that we did?
Yeah, the new style.
We don't have a name for it. We've just been calling it the bio video.
The bio
we
video.
Should probably come up with something.
Yeah, you need a creative, clever name, and let's put him in the show notes, and we'll also put your website in. Now, you said the rest is history, but my listeners don't know what that history is. So, what happened with this video? Did it blow up your business?
It blew it up. It's
How many views? What's happened in your business as a result of this one crazy YouTube video, and who shared it that was important for you?
So Ash Amberjay of the Middle Finger Project got a hold of it, and she shared it to her mailing list. I'm also a member of. She has a group called Unfuckwithable Girlfriends, and and it's a Facebook group that I'm part of, and so anyway, it was you don't get on there to self promote at all, so I wasn't pumping the video in the Facebook group, but I was asking Facebook ad questions. And then one of the fellow members, this is also one of those serendipitous moments, she said, well, share it, like I want to see it. And so I posted it in the thread, and then everyone just kind of went bananas. And then, and then everything kind of died down. Like a month passed, and then somehow it came, Ash saw it, and then she called me out in the group and asked if she could write a blog post about it. And of course I was, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So anyone who's easily offended, that quadrant may not be the right space for you, but I'm always intrigued with people. I mean, the Middle Finger Project, come on. What is this person all about? I had to lean into that. I've had, and I had kind of heard about it before. And so, just know that there may be some things that are that may offend your sensibilities, and so you may not be a part of that group. Let me read you Caroline's bio as an introduction, because I want everybody to hear how this bio reads. It's written beautifully. Caroline Mays, I want to say that correctly, Caroline, I-N-E, and Mays, M-A-Y-S, is a writer and the creator of SwitchbladeLemonade.com, a defiantly unorthodox bio writing salon, love that specializes in crafting beautiful online bios for service-oriented businesses. She insists that the average About Me paragraph is crammed with accolades, facts, and humorous quirks we hope sound good on paper, is not only a boring square we're conditioned to stuff ourselves into, it's a coffin-shaped box we're expected to lie down in. Conformity is dead on the inside, while stories that made us are robust, complicated, and very much alive. With aggressive creativity, intelligent observation, and unapologetic audacity, Caroline helps clients unleash a truer, bolder, irresistibly compelling bio that sells their work instead of an uninspired, predictable one that notoriously sells them short. Oh my goodness. Just the words in those 3 paragraphs. I'm sorry if I didn't do it justice, Caroline, but my goodness, your writing is amazing. You're painting this picture of us lying down in the bio coffin. It's so good. It's so really good. And so, of course, that's what any of us want. And now I'm thinking, okay, I need to hire you to go through my About Us page because it's boring. It's very, very boring. Okay, so let's.
And that bio it's more of like my business bio, my homepage bio, and then of course the bio that we use for the video is about me specifically. And so anyway, of course, it's an entirely different ball game.
It's really neat. It's really neat though. And I really want people to watch that video because it's going to make you think about your own. We have in our industries these demo videos or sizzle reels or whatever you want to talk about them. And a lot of people do try to do that face to camera work that kind of fills in any blanks that maybe you've left out that you aren't able to showcase on stage or what have you. And so I just think that you may not go all the way down the rabbit hole, but I just feel like this is such an interesting idea. And lots of videos make you go, okay, well, who cares? And so and the same with the bio. Okay, who cares? So we're trying to break out of that. Do you think bios are really that important? Let's talk about that just right out of the chute.
Yeah, I think bios are really important. What a lot of people may not realize is that your bio or your about page, it is the most read page on your website. And especially speakers or people who are selling services, those things tend to be, a higher dollar sign.
Right.
It's not like buying, a $10 coffee mug off the internet. It's something that you pay a lot of money for. And in a lot of, circumstances, you're going to be working closely with people, or you're investing heavily maybe in a product, an e-product, or a course that they've designed. And you really want to, when you're going to fork over that kind of money,
Right.
you really want to know who this person is. And so they're extremely important. And then, we have this way that we go about talking about ourselves online. And it's so dry and so dated. And I see attempts to, to kind of reach in different directions. And we never quite get there. It's like you said earlier, who cares? And that's kind of the hardest part is making people, give a shit really about you, And so anyway, that's the struggle, but yeah.
They're important. And I get it. If you're dropping $10,000, you want to know who it is that you're getting into bed with. This is important. And I think that when people come to you having read all of your stuff, having kind of been a stalker, some guy on Friday said, I've been stalking you for 2 years, and I've been reading all your stuff and listening to all your podcasts. They feel like they know you so much better than you know them. And I think that that's such an advantage to closing a sale.
Right. And then, you have so many people that do a lot of the same things. There's a lot of speakers, there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of copywriters, there's a lot of designers. And so, why should they pick you? How are you any different from anybody else? Oh yeah, you kind of do the same thing, blah, blah, blah. You're talking about, acceptance and gratitude and vulnerability, like all the kind of candy words that we hear all the time. And so anyway, you have to really think of your story is the most unique thing about you, as opposed to your title. Lots of people have your title.
Right. And I think that that's a good segue into, and by the way, I'm going to be the first one in line. You are going to rewrite my bio for me. I'm going to hire you. And I would, if you're game, we'll talk about this when we're finished. I would also like to feature you on our Speaker Launcher boutique page, where we offer services from other people. So we'll talk about that after we're done.
Awesome.
But you said something about tell your story. Let's talk about what's wrong with the current kind of quote unquote tell your story mantra that we've been hearing about. Why is it not exactly right?
Well, first of all, we don't know how to do it, right? So we're out there.
I'm raising my hand. I don't. Right. You're right.
We're out there, saying tell your story. And then, so the next question is how. And then we have these, this language that we use where we'll say, just be yourself, right? Or, you have to be vulnerable. And these are they're these completely intangible concepts that we can't really, it does take curation, and it does take an investigative process and some detective work to figure out what your story is. And one of the things that kind of like hits me the most is the be vulnerable piece, because I feel like, and I say this in this book that I'm writing, that we have confused a lot of times vulnerability with confession. And people end up telling these stories that aren't crafted, and they come across like a confession, and they can really kind of be, they can do the opposite of what they're supposed to do.
Right. It's not, it's inauthentic often because it's contrived vulnerability.
Yes. And so I think, and so another thing that people will do in this attempt to tell their story and be vulnerable is they think they have to have this kind of this epic tale, and so things get embellished, or especially if you have if you have a near death experience story, which a lot of people do have. They have, we're alive, we're out there in the world, we have brushes with death, and I see that a lot too, where we want to tell that tale that we think is going to hook people in.
Mm-hmm.
And that might not be the story worth telling, is the one that your hardest story, your time in the hospital, your time that you were injured, that might be the story worth telling. It might not be the story worth telling. And if it is the story worth telling, you really have to you need to handle that thing with grace, because otherwise it's going to get kind of, flopped out there, and it's not going to hit home with people. Or it kind of gets downplayed, which is another, way that we end up doing it. Right. And so anyway, that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg of like these attempts at tell your story.
Right.
And then the traditional ways that we go about telling our story is, we see kind of the chronological timeline story. Mm-hmm. That's really boring. Or we'll have people kind of treat their bio like their resume. It's kind of this more fleshed out, full of accolades,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera. Or we'll tell these, we'll have these kind of quirky paragraphs where we try to be funny. We talk about our dog, or, our late night,
it's that favorite. Let's be human in the last paragraph.
Yes. Right. Let's be human in the last paragraph. And none of that stuff, like we were talking about earlier, makes people care,
right.
About us, or really explains why we're doing anything that we're doing. We're missing that. We're missing the heart of it.
What I've realized? This is hard.
It's so hard.
This is so hard. Okay. So how do we kind of sift through? I'm always saying to my clients that they're selling themselves short on what they've done in their history. Is the mm-hmm. history important?
It might be. We are asking ourselves a lot of the questions that we've all heard, which is, who are we talking to? Mm-hmm. Right. And so we have to kind of go through those ideal clients to get to that answer. But it's interesting. Like schooling, for example, or certifications, and all those accolades. There might be a place for that on your website, and especially if you're really proud of it, then we want to have it up there. But again, it's one of those things where if your audience might read that and be like, okay, like they know what they're, they have a lot of, medals and trophies and stuff. Do I still want to give them all my money?
Badges. We used to call them badges. My old boss, he would get another badge to put up on his wall.
Right.
The Order of Canada was the big one. And that's like a big accolade. But anyway, his wife called them badges.
Well, and people have them. That's the thing too, is that they really don't, there's a lot of smart people out there. Mm-hmm. And we've all got a lot of accolades.
You're kind of making me wonder if you don't do it in two different ways. On the top end is the beautiful, well-written story and kind of bio that we're talking about with you. And then maybe there's some sort of bullet points underneath it that says, for the eggheads that really want to know, here's the bullet points. Just in case there are clients of ours who are very detail oriented, who really want to dive deep into it. What about that?
I love that idea, and I've seen that. Done.
Well,
I've only seen it done one time. Well,
okay.
Not like I see it, but done very often.
Can you identify Can you identify whose website that was done well on, just so we could reference it, or can you remember?
Well, I can remember, and it is our friend Ash Amberjay, where,
Okay. All right.
yeah, where she has, you know, a creative bio,
Okay.
and or she's changed hers up a little bit too. But anyway, there's a blurb at the very, 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 very bottom.
Okay.
That's something you could take for a press release or something like that, for
All right.
example, or you know, as an intro, you know, to a radio show, for example,
Right.
that's just more accolade driven, and
Okay.
it's you know, it's a paragraph, you know. And that's the thing, is that that was it, and we didn't really know her very well, then it would be like, okay, you
Okay.
know, and
There's still lots there.
yeah, well, and there would be lots of people like her, but of course it's all that other language that sets her apart. You know, that's not the stuff that sets her apart.
Gotcha.
But she uses it, yeah.
Gotcha. I want to give a shout out to Scott Stratton. We're going to have him on a future episode. He was someone who, from the stage at a conference I was just at for our Canadian group of speakers, CAPS, was talking about not being vulnerable for the sake of being vulnerable. So I just want to give him a shout out that his ideas were top of mind for me here today. Okay, so let's say we're trying to filter through, say we're doing that top piece. How do we decide which of the stories are worth telling?
Well, so as we were saying, obviously we're thinking about the audience first, right? And that's going to direct us into what story is worth telling, right? Um, but you want to consider your business, you know, and consider, or just if you sat back and scanned kind of the landscape of your life, and you think of the narrative that sticks out in your mind, or the narrative that you're always telling yourself, and which, you know, what are the stories that shaped you, you know, as an individual, or the stories that show
Let's give them some questions to ask. What are the stories that shaped you as an individual, like that?
right, or, you know, what are the stories that that made you strong?
Made you strong. That's good.
Right. What are the stories that that have sustained you?
Mm,
Um,
that's good. These are good questions to ask.
right. What's the story that expresses how you work, or show your values?
Oh, that's interesting. So that might be one that I would pull to the forefront because I don't know if you've ever read this book. It's called Attracting Your Perfect Customer.
Mm-mm.
It's about the power of strategic synchronicity is something in the subtitle. So it's kind of a neat mishmash of the woo-woo and strategy. And
Okay.
the idea behind this is that you're actually looking for clients who share the same values as you.
Right. Oh
So,
yeah.
for instance, you know, I try to take Fridays off, especially in the summertime. And if I'm working with someone who's a workaholic and just doesn't believe in that, we're not going to really get along very well. It's not going to be a
Right.
great match for fit. So, for me to work my values into my bio is probably, you know, and I'm selling a lifestyle here. It's called The Wealthy Speaker.
Right.
So if you're not doing something with that, I mean, why be an entrepreneur? And so I think that could be really interesting to kind of go a little bit about down the value path in mine. Not that
Yeah.
this is all about me, but I'm just, hopefully that'll inspire somebody else's ideas too.
Yeah. And I love that that's sticking out for you. And I
Hmm.
think it's, you know, we have to be careful of, and what, you know, and what I want to encourage people to do, is, you know, let's take a designer, for example. If you're a designer, then you would, I think, naturally people want to tell the story of how they, you know, loved to draw, you
Hmm.
know, growing up, or something like that. We
Right.
try and kind of correlate, you know, and we make these direct connections
Hmm.
when that might not be it. You know what I mean?
Right. You're
And
going to dig a
again,
little deeper and just keep going. So, what about the obvious? Okay, so I have clients who have had all kinds of natural disasters. My client Warren McDonald, he got trapped under a boulder in Australia and lost both of his legs. And
oh,
he goes around, I mean, he still climbs mountains. This guy is incredible. He does
yeah,
a lot of things that most, you know, people with two legs and two arms would never attempt to do. He's quite this. So what would somebody like him hone in on?
well, it sounds like
The story? I mean, is the story written for you?
yeah, and in that instance, and and again, I mean, I can't imagine a situation off the top of my head where that story wouldn't kind of
Be out in front.
be an inspiration.
Hmm.
But even still, even first of all, it's I don't want to say he's lucky, but it's great to have that kind of story.
Right.
Again, you don't have to have that kind of story.
And I've got lots of clients who would say, okay, well, that's not me. Let's go somewhere else. And just a little idea for Warren might be, well, why don't you start with all the things that he does today and then say, and guess what? He does all of these things despite having been trapped under a boulder for 2 days and blah, 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 blah. That kind
Right.
of might be a neat little twist to talk about some of the interesting things he does today and then back up to the story. But I don't know. I'm not a writer. I'm just kind of trying to get people to think about it. And
Yeah. Well,
there's,
no, and I like that because actually, and this is again, I feel like I was seeing this a lot with the tell your story mantra
Mhm.
is that people, even people that have those kind of epic tales, is they start off with the action, which may or may not be good, but you still have to handle that story carefully
Right.
because especially nowadays, we hear horrific stories all the time, you know what I mean? And I don't feel like we are as titillated by the gory details right out of
Mhm.
the gate. You know what I mean? We might just be like, you know what? After lunch,
We
or
we
something like
might,
that.
especially if you're a decision maker and you have looked at speaker after speaker after speaker, you are probably somewhat jaded to these stories. So you know
Yes,
what? You're right. We have to craft them in ways that we hadn't thought of before.
right. And we can't just wallop the reader over the head with
Mm, the
these
story.
horrific details and again expect them to care. I mean, it really takes an unfolding of the story, but also, I mean, I say unfolding, that doesn't mean, take this slow meandering,
Yeah.
walk into the story either.
Okay.
So there's a lot of craft involved. And the easiest way that I say it to myself and I say it, out loud is you have to handle the story respectfully
Okay.
and with grace, because otherwise, especially if you have this horrific tale, you don't want it to miss the mark.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, you're really, I think, getting our readers, our listeners, I should say, to think about this a little bit differently. And I know they're all pulling up their own About Us pages right now. I did it and I tried to do something and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what
yeah.
to do. So I will indeed hire it out. And I'm so excited that I met you. Okay, but let's talk first before we switch gears about the person who doesn't have any big thing that they've been through. They haven't won an Olympic medal. They haven't lost a limb. They haven't overcome cancer. What about the people who are just kind of straight up like a business leadership speaker? They've written some books and, they're out speaking.
Yeah. It's so. I had a memoir teacher say this. Let me see if I can remember exactly. I'm probably going to butcher this, but it was, she said that some people have amazing stories to tell, And some people have regular lives, but amazing ways that they talk about it.
Mm.
And so it really just matters how you talk about something. And so, for the bio video that we were talking about earlier that I have on my website, the one that, that's my about page, is I'm a runner. And that was the parallel, that I compared it to writing,
Right.
throughout my whole bio.
That's why the video was so cool.
Yeah, thank you. And so, I'm a runner, you know what I mean? And that's not a near-death experience. There are lots of runners out there. And yet, if you craft the story correctly, you can make a beautiful statement about yourself and really illustrate, where your values and where your wisdom lies. And so everyone's got that. They've got something in their lives. And sometimes it's, I'm putting the word story in air quotes, like we can kind of embed stories within stories. And so a story can be 2 sentences long, but some detail that says a lot about, who you are or how you handle a situation, or, something that makes you very, very human, can be dropped into, a kind of a broader story, and do a lot of heavy lifting. I hope I can say this on the air, but like, there's 2 sentences in my bio where I talk about, I would get these huge blisters on my feet because I ran far and often.
Yeah.
And I couldn't run unless, my shoes were rubbing on my feet. And so I would wrap, ultra thin maxi pads around my feet with duct tape. And that's this humorous little detail that you weren't really expecting, most likely, in that bio. And that's truth. And it's this one thing that I just remember about myself.
And you know what, that speaks volumes in terms of grit. I mean, it just says to me that you are going to work your butt off getting me a great bio because you've got this grit inside of you. Like, if you can do that, you can do anything. That was an amazing piece of that. It was really, really telling, and I loved it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and that's an example. And I think, we all have those, and we have to think about them. And we all have those memories that kind of stick out where we're like, oh yeah, and I used to do this like weird thing, or this funny thing, or this thing that people used to laugh at me about for doing. But it, there's a story within there because it says a lot about how you think.
Well, not only can people benefit from this listen, thinking about crafting their stories within their speech differently. And we have been talking about the power of that for a long time. Kendra Hall is a client of mine, and she's a big storytelling person. And, doing it from the stage is just this on steroids again, and being able to craft it and then tell it in this meaningful way. Being a really good writer is so helpful in this profession.
It is. It really is. And it's funny because I'm working with writers, and I feel like they have, this, not necessarily a hang up, but they want to make it clear, like, I'm a writer too. And it's, but they'll say I'm too close to my own story, or I can't write about myself. And so I just wanted to say, there are lots of good writers out there, and people that have written books, people that write for a living, and still, when it comes to their own story, it's kind of tough because they're kind of close to it. And it feels really weird maybe to write about yourself. And so anyway,
we say you can't see the label when you're inside the jar. It's hard.
Right.
It's difficult to do that. Well,
Yeah.
I'm excited about your book. Tell us what your book's going to be called.
My book is called Beautiful Bios Because Boring is Ugly. And,
Love it.
so, yeah, thank you. And so, yeah, it's an e-workbook is what I've been calling it.
Oh.
Yeah, because I want to teach people how to, it's kind of, it's, I don't want to call it a how to because it's not like step one, do this, step two, do this.
But that would be helpful.
It would, but I also feel like there's a lot of that out there, and they always miss the mark. And I really want to get people thinking about, like, kind of get people in the right mind space and get people like handling the right concepts, and asking themselves the right questions so they can kind of free themselves up to do something really creative. Because I feel like, that's a huge, element that's missing, is the creativity part. There is no one way to do this. You can really, flex your muscles and when I talk about stories, on my website, I almost make them sound like they're living, and I think they are, because they're always changing in our minds, and they change, every time we revisit them in our memories and stuff like that. And there's so many different ways that you can tell them. And so I guess it is a little bit of a how-to, and there are some steps, but also I want to get people thinking, conceptually about, just to get themselves in the right frame of mind to even begin.
I love it. Okay, get that book done, girl. We want to be able to promote it over here, and we'll put it on the you can let us know, and we'll put it on the show notes once it's ready to roll. Now let's talk about, if somebody wants to hire you, let's tell them how much it's going to be. This show, we're taping this around the end of 2017. Let's say it'll air early 2018. What is your current fee for writing a bio, and how do people get in touch with you?
My current fee is pretty simple. It's a flat rate. It's $1,000 for a bio.
Okay.
And you get in touch with me. There's a contact page on my website. And you just fill it out and send me an email.
All right. So switchbladelemonade.com. Caroline Mays, Mays. Do it. Just get in touch with her. And I'm so excited. I think we're going to stay in touch. And I know I'm going to work with you. And so everybody can go quickly to look at the before. Maybe we'll have a before and after on there.
Yeah.
So that they can see. I have appreciated this conversation so much, and I am super excited to see what's cooking with you, and I'll be here standing by when you get ready to go out on the speaking circuit, okay?
Okay, thank you so much, Jane, for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Caroline Mays. And with that, we'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speakers Show. Please visit speakerlauncher.com for your free Wealthy Speaker audit, and visit speakerlauncher.com/podcast for show notes and many more resources to help you catapult your speaking business. See you soon, Wealthy Speakers.